Hey guys, Kevin here with the Attack of Opportunity, bringing you a special surprise update. I know it's been a while since you've heard from me. Since pretty much I announced that Final Fantasy special I wanted to do, and for the life of me, I just couldn't remember. I had all these grand ideas before, and I just couldn't figure out how to get them to work. So I figured maybe I'm taking this the wrong way. Possible. I mean, I've always been one to kind of go a little bit over my head, so I figured why not try a simpler approach. Instead of me trying to make these amazing videos and go through all the trouble to really, really go crazy, why not get something simpler out there that you guys might be able to see a little bit more of who I am as a person and a gamer. Yeah, anyone can sit here, play a game, and tell you about it, but it's kind of cool to kind of learn a little bit more about the guys that you're watching every week, and it's pretty much what I want to try to do with this. I'm going to talk to Steve and possibly a new addition to the team, Erik, later on, and see if they'd like to jump in on this. But my tribute to the Final Fantasy series, I want to talk a little bit more about how the series as a whole has basically made me into the gamer you see before you. How literally that series was probably one of the first games I've ever played, and also one of the first games that truly made me fall in love with gaming subculture in general. If not for the Final Fantasy series, I would probably never have picked up that controller, and I probably would not be here today. Hey, doing the show, all that. So, first and foremost, let's start from the beginning here. I'm going to talk a little bit more just how it started, favorite series game in the series, just a little bit more background info. Uh, if you guys like these and want more retrospectives, I can bring in some of my other stories from the past, things of that sort, but just a basic introductory story for now. So, let's get this one rolling. More or less with me, it started with the very first Final Fantasy on the NES. Growing up, I was born in about 91-ish, so I grew up watching my dad play this one constantly. This one and Shining Force, to tell you the truth. RPGs were kind of my thing when I was a kid. Uh, but when I was around 3, 4 years old, I finally started getting interested in actually wanting to play, not just watching him play. And I couldn't really read what was on the screen. I didn't know what was going on, but I had fun just sitting there controlling these little guys, watching the spells fly around, and it was so cool. Like that was my first memory, just realizing that hey, this little dude with the straw hat can set things on fire, and it's just like okay, all right, and I started playing with that. And a few years passed. Dad kind of fell out of it. Didn't really buy any of the newer systems. I mean, I had an NES up until that one died on me. And then the Genesis died on me, and then they bought me an N64 a few years later. And the Final Fantasy series and me just went our separate ways for a little while. It wasn't until Final Fantasy 7 and 8 on the PC, and this was, several years after their release. I mean, I didn't find Final Fantasy 8 until 2000, 2002, somewhere in there. Like several years after it was originally released, and I had two copies. These copies for one we borrowed from someone, and one my dad actually bought for me because one of the discs from the other copy was missing for some reason. And I had a copy of 7 as well. So I started playing both of these, and I instantly fell in love with Final Fantasy VIII. Not because, everyone says that 7 had the better story. More or less, I just fell in love with the visual style of Final Fantasy VIII, and the story itself kind of drew me in. I was always a huge military buff, and that kind of brought it together. Like, I'm not a jarhead or a soldier in any way, but I do like, Tom Clancy novels, the Rainbow Six series. I like stories about politics and military situations. I don't know why. I mean, for the life of me, cannot wrap my head around any of it. but I like stories about the mercenaries, the warriors, the knights, and all the basic war stories. I guess it comes from my old man sitting me down. It's like showing me the battles of Midway, sitting me down watching the military channel with the old man. I don't know. It's just something about that particular line of story until all the sorcerer's bullshit. I'm not going to start there. But that particular story really drew me in, and I fell in love with it from the start. Final Fantasy VIII was probably my revisiting of the series, and it's because of that game that I decided to go back and catch up on what I'd missed. I mean, by that point it was just like, wait a second, there's 6 more of these that I have yet to play. What the have I been missing? So I went back through. I was still young. I didn't know that 2 and 3 had not been released in the States. I wouldn't play either of those until several years later. Final Fantasy II I didn't play until Dawn of Souls. And then Final Fantasy III I actually didn't touch until, I want to say, like my freshman, sophomore year of college, when I finally figured out how to get it patched for an emulator. And once I had that figured out, it was golden. So, and I can thank Steve for that one, actually. He's the one that finally convinced me to play it. Final Fantasy IV, same thing. He finally got me a translated patch, told me that the American dub was shit, and that I had to play this one, and pretty much the American dub itself is just kind of clean and babied, and he's right. There were certain things that were cut out that didn't need to be, but for a true fan of the series that just wants to play the games, I'm not going to say, don't play Final Fantasy IV just for that reason. So, that aside, Final Fantasy V, I barely touched it, but I did play it, like, when the Game Boy Advance release came out. Same with Final Fantasy VI. I played a little bit of the SNES version when I was younger, didn't really remember it. And then when I was older, I finally went back and started doing my research, and I fell in love with it. Final Fantasy VII, one of the few games besides the original Final Fantasy and parts of Final Fantasy VIII that I even came close to finishing. I've yet to finish 6, 5, 4, 3, or 2, 9, 10. Don't even get me started. And 12 was just too fucking long. And 13 I'm pretty close, but still working on that one. Life, job. It started getting hectic. But I've loved the series. I've studied the lore for years, and I do love these games with all my heart. That's why you'll see all this stuff whenever there's a new Final Fantasy game. I just start going crazy. And that's also why I suggested doing the panel, because quite frankly, it's a series that me and Steve, and as well as Erik, when he came into this channel, we all knew this very well. And speaking of Erik, hopefully during these specials, I'll give you guys a better chance to meet him and get to know more about our newest member of the crew. But this was just kind of a brief refresher course of who I am, what kind of inspired me to do this. If you guys like this, want to hear more of it, please let me know. Or if you just, have some comments, questions, concerns, leave a comment. Don't be too nasty now. I apologize for the horrible quality of the audio and the disheveled look. It's like 5 a.m. and I just randomly had the idea to do this and decided, okay, I have to put this down before I forget. So the next few will probably be a little cleaner, cut, edited properly, better audio. I won't look like shit. But I really wanted to get this out there just to let you guys know that 1, we're not dead, and 2, well, I just didn't want to forget about the idea before it started. So thank you again on behalf of the Attack of Opportunity and all of our friends here. This is Captain signing out, and hopefully we'll see you all on the next Attack of Opportunity. Thank you.